Today's lesson is the Los Angeles wildfires and the global climate crisis. Hello, everyone. I'm Mike.
I am Roger, and today we're going to be talking about wildfires in the USA, especially in Los Angeles, but these wildfires seem to be happening all over the world these days. But the one in Los Angeles recently was noteworthy because, it was happening in a city there. And what was it, Pacific Palisades or something was pretty much totally destroyed by this wildfire. And when that happens, people are going to be very concerned about these wildfires.
Absolutely. They were terrible to watch on television. These fires were out of control. It seemed that the firefighting forces that they had there on the ground were completely outmatched. I know that they were sending down firefighters from Canada and bringing them up from Mexico, but still they just had to kind of let whole areas and whole neighborhoods of the city burn, and some of those helicopter shots were truly like something from a Hollywood disaster movie, something apocalyptic like the end of the world. And then the shots from helicopters flying over these neighborhoods, it was just street after street, block after block, neighborhood after neighborhood, just gone, just burned down. Many celebrities, I remember hearing, that had lost their homes, and of course many other people who don't have the money to rebuild. And this is something that we're told by scientists we're going to have to get more used to, because it's going to be happening more with the world getting hotter and drier. These types of wildfires in certain areas of the world especially are going to become much more common and probably much more destructive in the future. So let's learn all about this very difficult and sad topic in our article. The Los Angeles wildfires and the global climate crisis. In January 2025, Los Angeles faced wildfires that burned over 230 square kilometers and destroyed more than 18,000 structures. Around 200,000 residents were forced to flee their homes, and entire neighborhoods were reduced to ashes. The wildfires were the most severe to hit the region to date. Fueling the fires were strong Santa Ana winds, which blow hot, dry air from interior areas toward the coast. The winds dry out vegetation and thus make it easier for fires to start and spread. However, California is not alone in facing extreme wildfires. In recent years, massive fires have burned up extensive areas in Australia, Greece, and Canada.
大家好，第一部分介绍名词 vegetation， 它的意思是植物或是植被的总称。例如 The vegetation on the side of the highway needed to be cut by the road crew. 公路一侧的植被需要由道路工作人员修剪。或者 All of the vegetation in my yard turned brown because it hadn't rained in over a month. 我院子里的所有植被都变成了棕色，因为已经1个多月没有下雨了。继续看到形容词 massive， 表示大规模的、巨大的、大量的或是极为严重的。例如 The charity event received massive support from the community. 这个慈善活动得到社区的巨大支持。接着看到形容词 extensive， 它的意思是大范围的，也可以是全面的或是广泛的。例如 The detective carried out an extensive search of the property. 警探对那座房地产进行大范围的搜查。可以说 After the fire, the kitchen needed extensive repairs. 火灾后，厨房需要大规模的修缮。
Okay, now remember earlier this year in January 2025, Los Angeles faced wildfires that burned over 230 square kilometers and destroyed more than 18,000 structures.
Wow.
So that's a big fire that happened in LA and Los Angeles there. We had wildfires there, fires that are out of control and spreading over large areas. Yeah, it burned a big area of land, or lots and lots of trees there, and of course lots of structures like buildings and homes were destroyed. Around 200,000 residents were forced to flee their homes. They had to leave their homes. They had to escape from their homes, and entire neighborhoods were reduced to ashes. Ashes, of course, are what form after a fire has finished burning. If you go on a camping trip or something, you might have a campfire, and you got to make sure the fire is out, and after the fire is out, there'll be these gray things on the ground. Those are ashes. If something's reduced to ashes, it has burned down.
That's absolutely nothing left except that powdery gray and black stuff that is just the burned remains of whatever was on fire. It says the wildfires were the most severe to hit the region to date. Late summer wildfires have always been a thing in California because it can be a hot and dry climate, but now they're happening earlier and earlier. Some of them seem to just sort of happen all through the year. And to date, up to this time, up until 2025, the time that we're living in now, these were the most severe, the most damaging. My aunt's actually house was burned down in Oakland, California back in the 1990s in a wildfire, but the size of those fires compared to the size today and the amount of damage caused, it wasn't even comparable. Those were much smaller fires. They're getting bigger and more powerful. It says fueling the fires were strong Santa Ana winds, which blow hot, dry air from interior areas toward the coast. So that was the cause of the fire. That's why the fires were so big and so destructive. They were fueled by this wind. As everyone knows, to have fire, you need three things. You need something to burn, you need heat, and you need oxygen. And the oxygen, the wind, the air was being provided by these Santa Ana winds. These are seasonal winds. These are normal things that happen in Southern California. And these winds blow hot, dry air from interior areas toward the coast. Yes, Los Angeles sits on the coast, of course. Going to the beach is something that people love to do there, but it is also very close to the desert. You don't have to go too far inland from LA to reach very dry areas stretching onto Las Vegas and places like that. So air from that part of the state, the continent, will blow towards the ocean, towards the coast, and it will bring this hot, dry air from the interior areas, not coastal areas, but interior areas, areas that are not near the water and that are obviously hotter and drier. And as it says, these winds dry out vegetation and thus make it easier for fires to start and spread. So the interior, the inside areas are hot and dry, the wind there is hot and dry, and it dries out all the vegetation, plants and trees and shrubs and grasses, all the things that grow. That's vegetation. So when we talk about the rich vegetation in the jungle, we talk about lots of green things growing, whereas in the desert there is almost no vegetation because there's no rain. So this dries out the plants, basically, the trees and plants, and that provides the fuel for the fire, and it makes it easier for the fires to start and spread. With the ground being hot and dry and the wind blowing, this is a perfect storm for a fire to become very big and very powerful very quickly.
Right, and of course we're talking about the Los Angeles wildfires of early 2025. However, California is not alone in facing extreme wildfires. Okay, so of course these can happen all over the world. There was some news of wildfires in Canada as well, which we're going to talk about in the next sentence. I think that was like last year or something. Smoke from those wildfires were wafting down to the U.S. and people are going, what's going on? Where's this wildfire? What's happening up in Ontario or someplace like that?
There, and Fort McMurray in Alberta was completely burned down. That was a town up there.
Okay, so it's further west there. But in any case, yes, California is not alone with these wildfires. If you're not alone, you're not the only one. And in recent years, massive fires have burned up extensive areas in Australia, Greece, and Canada. And I did hear about the ones in Australia and Canada. I didn't know Greece could have them, but that makes sense because Greece is kind of a dry place. So sure, they could happen there. I wonder if they can happen here in good old Taiwan.
Hopefully not anytime soon. I think we might still be getting a little bit too much rain. But yes, it could be a feature of the weather in the future. All right, let's take a quick break. Then we'll come back to learn more about wildfires and the global climate crisis. Along with becoming more frequent, wildfires around the world are increasing in intensity. Research points to climate change being the primary cause of these intense wildfires. Scientists describe a pattern called climate whiplash, where wet seasons bring heavy rain followed by long periods of extreme dryness. The rain brings about more plant growth, and the plants later dry out and become fuel for wildfires. Even areas without strong winds can experience raging fires due to this cycle. Wildfires are not the only natural disaster being strengthened by climate change. Higher global temperatures are making hurricanes stronger, increasing the risk of floods and causing long-lasting droughts. Moreover, heat waves are becoming more common, which makes many places dangerously hot for weeks at a time. Scientists warn that without action, these extreme events will only get worse.
第二部分介绍名词 intensity， 表示强度，也可以是剧烈或是激烈的意思。可以说 The storm grew in intensity in the late afternoon. 暴风雨在傍晚时变得更强。又或者说 I had to look away due to the intensity of the light. 由于光线强烈，我必须转移视线。另外补充这个字的形容词 intense, I-N-T-E-N-S-E, intense, 指强烈的或是极度的。造个句子 Edward finished his weightlifting session with an intense leg workout. Edward 以高强度的腿部训练来结束他的举重课程。另外一个句子 The firefighters couldn't get close to the blaze because of the intense heat. 因为热度很高，消防员没办法靠近大火。
Okay, so let's continue talking about the relationship between wildfires and climate change. Along with becoming more frequent, wildfires around the world are increasing in intensity. Okay, so besides them being more frequent, we also have to talk about the fact that these fires are increasing in the amount of intensity. Intensity just means how intense something is, how strong, how severe it is. And yes, indeed, we're just talking about these really big fires. So yeah, because of the frequency of these wildfires, they are actually getting more and more intense, also because of climate change.
That's right. Intensity, we can also say power in that kind of sense. So they're increasing in power or intensity and destructive power as well. Research points to climate change being the primary cause of these intense wildfires. So scientists generally agree that climate change, the warming of the world, is making storms worse, making wildfires worse. It's causing a lot of big changes in the atmosphere and the climate. And that is the explanation why wildfires seem to be getting worse and happening in places where they didn't happen before. Scientists describe a pattern called climate whiplash, where wet seasons bring heavy rain, followed by long periods of extreme dryness, right? A lot of people who don't trust global warming, well, why is it so cold in the wintertime, and why do we get so much snow? It's not really about that. It's talking about global warming, meaning the average temperature of the entire planet will rise, but locally, that will mean more extreme weather, and that's exactly what's happening. We are getting snowstorms in England, where they didn't used to have big cold winters, and now in the same country in England, they have really hot summers when they used to have a very mild climate all through the year. Now you're having big extremes at either end. So you're having a lot of rain happening where it didn't happen so much, maybe in a short time. We're seeing more floods around the world as well. And then in the hot periods, you'll get much hotter periods, much drier periods. So that's this whiplash. Whiplash is what happens to your neck. In a car crash, your head flies forward and then flies back really quickly, causing injury to your neck and your spine. So it's talking about this really quick movement from one extreme over to the other extreme, and that causes a lot of these dramatic environment and weather events that we are seeing. It says the rain brings about more plant growth, so that could be a good thing. Heavier rain causes more plants to grow, and the plants later dry out and become fuel for wildfires. So in areas where there might not have been plants, there are more plants, but then they quickly become very dry plants, and that basically becomes fuel or things for the fires to burn. Even areas without strong winds can experience raging fires due to this cycle. So again, it's not just the typically windy parts of the world, it's other parts of the world, places like Greece, as we mentioned, I think also around the Mediterranean, Spain and Portugal, they've had wildfires. This kind of thing did not happen much 10, 20 years ago.
Right, and of course, strong winds will help them spread quicker, but you don't necessarily have to have lots of winds to have these big fires. They can keep on burning for days on end. Now, here in the next paragraph, it says, wildfires are not the only natural disaster being strengthened by climate change. Okay, climate change is causing other problems with the climate. Higher global temperatures are making hurricanes stronger, increasing the risk of floods and causing long-lasting droughts. So yes, higher temperatures in the world are making those hurricanes and typhoons and cyclones stronger. And of course, we're going to have more flooding as a result of that. And we'll have those very long droughts. A drought, of course, is a period where there's no rain. It's just dry day on end. Sometimes Taiwan has droughts and we need to ration the water, but probably not as often as, say, places like California or Australia.
Not as often, but maybe more than Taiwan had 50 years or 100 years ago. So yes, that is another problem. Moreover, or in addition, heat waves are becoming more common. So long periods of very high temperatures in the summer, that's what we call a heat wave. These are becoming more common, which makes many places dangerously hot for weeks at a time. If it's very hot, things can overheat, machines can overheat. I think in California, some of the power lines were overheating, and that can cause problems if any sparks hit the ground, and the ground, of course, is very dry, and there's all that dry grass there. And this can happen for long periods or for weeks at a time in one event or in one episode. This can happen extremely a long time or much longer than before, and this happens summer after summer, year after year, season after season. So, of course, this is a continuing threat. Scientists warn that without action, these extreme events will only get worse. They told us that 30 or 40 years ago, and they were right, and they're saying it's still going to continue, and they're probably right about that too.
Yep, these extreme events or these occurrences will get worse and worse. We need to do something about this problem. Okay, we're at the end of the second part of our lesson. Let's wrap things up now with the third part.
It's crucial to address both the global climate crisis and the causes of extreme wildfires. To reduce the risk of wildfires, steps like clearing dry vegetation and improving firefighting resources should be taken. On a more macro level, climate change is a global problem that requires the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, which would slow the rate of global warming. Though a massive task, tackling climate change demands urgent action from all of us, governments, businesses, and individuals alike. Only by working together can we reduce the impact of natural disasters and create a safer future for everyone.
第三部分看到名词 reduction， 它的意思是减少或是降低。例如 The government hopes the new law will lead to a reduction in pollution. 政府希望新法会减少污染。再看一个例子 There was a small reduction in the number of students taking art this year. 今年修艺术课的学生人数微幅减少。最后看到动词 tackle， 它表示解决、应对或是处理。可以说We need to tackle the root causes of the problem to find a solution. 我们需要解决问题的根本原因，才能找到解决方法。最后一个例子 The government is tackling unemployment issues by creating more job opportunities. 政府透过创造更多工作机会来解决失业问题。
All right, we are back with looking at wildfires. So what can we do about some of these problems? Well, of course, it's a big global issue, but we have to start taking some action. So what do? It says it's crucial. It's absolutely important and necessary. It's crucial to address both the global climate crisis and the causes of extreme wildfires. So living here in Taiwan, we don't necessarily have extreme wildfires as being a threat, but being a part of the global community, we all need to do this, and governments need to do this and work together to make regulations to control climate change and try to bring temperatures back down to avoid some of these most terrible effects. And locally, of course, in places like California, they have to take more direct action. It says to reduce the risk of wildfires, steps like clearing dry vegetation and improving firefighting resources should be taken. So if you live in California or Canada or places like that where wildfires are a threat, clearing dry vegetation, cutting back those grasses and those dry bushes, dead trees, things like that, taking the fuel away from the fire is very important. And also improving firefighting resources. I think California had a problem of not enough firefighters, and things like specialized wildfire fighting equipment, water bombers, those planes that can scoop up water and drop them on fires. There are very few of those in many parts of the world, and so a lot of government money and effort has to be put into increasing our ability to fight the fires once they happen, because they will continue to happen.
Yeah, maybe somebody should invent a big giant hose or something, and they can suck water out of the ocean and spray it on those fires. That, of course, is easier said than done. And on a more macro level, macro here just means comprehensive in a large area. On a more macro level, climate change is a global problem that requires the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, which would slow the rate of global warming. Okay, so if you're looking at the overall picture here, we should recognize that climate change and these wildfires is a global problem. These things are a global problem, and we need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Reduction is the noun form of reduce, so the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions is crucial to stopping this problem, or at least slowing it down. And yes, we want to slow the rate of global warming to reduce its speed. And emission, of course, is something that is given off, usually in the form of gas. Like every so often, you need to have your emissions checked on your car or your scooter to make sure the gas isn't polluting the air or the atmosphere. And again, we need to reduce those greenhouse gas emissions. And yeah, that might slow down global warming.
Though a massive task, tackling climate change demands urgent action from all of us, governments, businesses, and individuals alike. Yes, this is not something where you can kind of say, well, hey, I recycle, so that's enough. No, we all need to be working much harder at this, both individually and as societies, as cultures, as countries, as communities. And so it's a huge task or a massive job or a big job, tackling climate change. When you tackle something, well, of course, you could be on a sports field where you grab the other player's legs and bring them down to the ground, but you're basically stopping that player. So when you're tackling a problem, it's like you're taking on a big problem. You're trying to beat that problem. You're trying to win over that problem. You're trying to face that problem and come out victorious in the end. So taking on climate change, fighting climate change, dealing with climate change as the globe, as all the people on our planet, it demands urgent action. It requires urgent and quick and important and decisive action from all of us. So governments, both local and national, businesses and individuals alike. So we all need to do our part to fight this because it is everyone's problem. Only by working together can we reduce the impact of natural disasters and create a safer future for everyone.
Indeed, so we hope to reduce this problem, and it won't be such a big problem in the future, and hopefully lots of people will contribute to this problem, or at least try to find a way to solve this problem, or at least reduce the effects of this problem sometime soon. Okay, we're at the end of our explanation for today. Here comes Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny， 今天要练习文意选填的题型，我们先快速浏览题目10个选项。 A. Raging， 动词 rage 可以指激烈进行、肆虐或是发怒， Raging 有可能是它的动名词，不过也有可能是形容词，表达猛烈的、剧烈的。 B. Long-lasting 是形容持久的。 C. Events 它是复数名词，表达事件。 D. Rate它也许是单数名词，可以表达速度啊、速率、价格、费用等等。它也有可能是复数动词，表达评价、评估、评定等等。E. Points to表示显示、指出什么什么。那么注意它是现在式第三人称单数动词的用法。F 选项 Interior 它可以形容内部的，也可以当名词表达内部。G. Alone 它可以当形容词或副词去表达单独、独自或是单独的、独自的。那么这个字当副词还可以表达单单、仅仅。再看到 H 选项 Demands 它也许是复数名词，这时候可以表达需求，也许是单数动词，可以表达要求、需要。I. Ashes它是复数名词，那注意这个字复数形可以指灰烬、骨灰。J 选项 brings about 表示导致、促成，那注意它是现在式第三人称单数动词的用法。看完选项我们就来做题目吧。第一题他提到说 Around 200,000 residents were forced to flee their homes and entire neighborhoods were reduced to 空格，那空格位于句尾，前面是 entire neighborhoods were reduced to， 那我们可以推断是要填入名词，而这个句子它是在说明洛杉矶野火的灾情，大约20万名居民被迫撤离家园，整个社区怎么样，在选项当中最适合答案就是 I. Ashes。 Reduce to ashes 这是固定说法，表达完全烧毁、 化为灰烬。第二题他提到说 Fueling the fires were strong Santa Ana winds which blow hot dry air from 空格 areas toward the coast。 空格前面是 from， 那么后面是 areas。 从句子结构来看，空格应该填入描述 areas 的形容词或者是分词。那符合的选项有 A. raging B. long-lasting F. interior还有 G. alone。 从句尾的 toward the coast 可以推知强劲的圣塔安娜焚风是来自内陆地区，所以正确答案应该要选 F. interior。 第三题他提到说 However, California is not 空格 in facing extreme wildfires。 空格前面有 California is not， 然后后面是 in facing extreme wildfires。 我们可以推断空格里面应该填入形容词或是分词。符合的选项有 A. raging B. long-lasting 还有 G. alone。 根据语义最适合的答案会是 G. alone。当我们用 be not alone in 加上动词 ing， 这是常见句型，表达说面对什么什么时并不孤单，那就说明了加州并不是唯一面临极端野火的地方。第四题他提到 research 空格 climate change being the primary cause of these intense wildfires。 空格前方是 research， 空格后方是 climate change。 从句子结构还有上下文判断，空格应该填入现在式的第三人称单数动词。符合选项有 E. points to H. demands 还有 J. brings about。 根据句意正确答案应该是 E. points to， 表达说研究显示指出气候变迁是造成这些猛烈野火的主要原因。第五题他提到 The rain 空格 more plant growth。 空格前面是 the rain， 空格后方是 more plant growth。 从句子结构还有上下文判断，空格里面要填入现在式的第三人称单数动词。符合的选项有 H. demands 还有 J. brings about。 那根据句意正确答案要选 J. brings about， 去表达降雨促使了植物生长。第六题他提到 Even areas without strong winds can experience 空格 fires due to this cycle。 空格前面是动词 experience， 后面是 fires， 可以推断空格里面要填入可以描述 fires 的形容词或分词。符合的选项有 A. raging B. long-lasting。 那这句所在的段落是在谈野火强度不断的增加，还有猛烈野火的主因。根据语义最适合答案应该要选 A. raging。 raging fires 就可以表达猛烈燃烧的火。 raging 也常常会搭配 wildfire storm debate 等等的字词一起使用。好，再看到下一题他提到Higher global temperatures are making hurricanes stronger, increasing the risk of floods and causing 空格 droughts。 那这个句子的时态是现在进行式。 Higher global temperatures are making 怎么样 increasing 怎么样 and causing 怎么样，这是表达全球气温升高让点点点提高点点点并导致点点点。那空格前面是 causing， 之后是 droughts， 那可以判断要填入形容 droughts 的形容词或分词。符合的选项只剩下 B. long lasting， 而且符合语义，表达说导致持久长期的干旱，那这是正确答案。再看到第八题他说 These extreme 空格 will only get worse。 那空格前面是 These extreme， 后面是 will only get worse。 从句子结构来看，空格应该填入复数名词。那符合的选项有 C. events 还有 H. demands。 那根据句意正确答案应该选 C. events。 我们用 extreme events 在这边来表达说极端气候的相关事件。再看到第九题，它是在 The reduction of greenhouse gas emissions 减少温室气体排放，在它之后接了关系子句 which would slow the 空格 of global warming。 那空格前面是 the， 后面是 of global warming， 我们可以推断空格要填入名词。符合的选项有 D. rate 还有 H. demands。 正确答案应该要选 D. rate， 去表达这将能减缓全球暖化的速度。我们再看到第10题，他提到 Though a massive task, tackling climate change 空格 urgent action from all of us。 空格前面是动名词片语 tackling climate change， 之后是 urgent action from all of us。 从句子结构判断，空格应该填入现在式的第三人称单数动词。符合的选项只剩下 H. demands， 而且符合语义，可以表达说尽管这是一项艰巨的任务，但应对气候变迁需要我们所有人采 采取紧急行动。好，那以上是今天的讲解，我们来回顾今天的单字吧。
Massive. The earthquake caused massive destruction in the city that left thousands of people homeless. Extensive. Due to extensive flooding, the government declared a state of emergency and sent rescue teams to assist affected areas. Intensity. The debate over climate change continues to grow in intensity, with scientists and politicians discussing various solutions. Drought. A lack of rainfall for several months has caused a severe drought in this area. Crucial. Investing in renewable energy sources is crucial for reducing dependence on fossil fuels. Reduction. Better waste management systems are needed to achieve a reduction in plastic pollution. Emission. Factories that fail to control toxic gas emissions risk facing heavy fines or even being shut down. Tackle. Many organizations are working together to tackle poverty by providing education and job opportunities.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I am Mike.
See you next time.